In June of 2014, a couple in Westfield, New Jersey, signed the papers on their dream home. 6 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, a quiet, tree-lined street where nothing bad ever seemed to happen. 2 weeks later, an envelope showed up in their mailbox. No return address, just their names, typed, and a single line inside that told them someone had been watching the house long before they ever moved in. They had no idea it was only the beginning. The house sat at 657 Boulevard in one of the most desirable school districts in New Jersey. The family, we'll call them the Broaduses as they became known publicly, had 3 young children. They'd sold their old home, packed their lives into boxes, and moved into what looked, from every angle, like a fresh start. Westfield wasn't the kind of place people associated with menace. It was manicured lawns, block parties, a 20-minute train ride from Manhattan. The house itself had a history. It had traded hands a few times over the decades, but nothing in the listing, nothing the sellers disclosed, hinted at what was waiting. The first letter arrived before they'd even finished unpacking. It was addressed to the wife, using a maiden name barely anyone should have known. The tone was strange, almost proprietary. Whoever wrote it referred to the house as though it belonged to them, not the family who'd just paid for it. At first, they assumed it was a prank, a bitter neighbour, a disgruntled former owner. New Jersey has its share of odd characters, and a strange letter is unsettling, but not, on its own, dangerous. Then the second letter came. The second letter referenced the children by their nicknames for the family's own home renovations, details nobody outside the household should have had. It asked questions about who was sleeping in which room. It suggested the sender could see them. That's when panic set in. The family began locking every door, drawing every blind. They installed security cameras. They stopped letting the kids play in the backyard alone. Within weeks, they'd contacted the Westfield police, who opened an investigation, one that would eventually pull in the FBI, private investigators, and forensic document examiners. More letters followed. Each one escalated. The author signed them only as the Watcher, claiming to represent a bloodline that had overseen the house for generations, describing it as needing young blood, and warning that the family's children would be brought to him. Handwriting analysts examined the letters. Forensic linguists studied word choice and sentence rhythm, trying to build a profile. DNA was pulled from envelope seals. None of it led anywhere conclusive. Whoever wrote these letters had been careful, methodical even. The family did something almost unthinkable for people who'd just bought a 6-bedroom house. They stopped sleeping there. Within a year of moving in, they'd relocated their children elsewhere, unable to shake the feeling that someone, somewhere nearby, was watching every window. Westfield police treated the case seriously from the start, but stalking cases without direct threats of violence are notoriously difficult to prosecute, especially when the suspect leaves no fingerprints, no return address, nothing but words on paper. Investigators looked at neighbours, they looked at former owners, they looked at people with grudges, people with mental health histories, people who simply lived close enough to have a clear view of the house. Dozens of persons of interest were floated publicly over the years. A neighbour with a fascination for the property's history, a local teenager, even a former owner's relative. But no arrest, no charge ever stuck. In 2015, the family made an extraordinary decision. They sued the previous owners, claiming they'd failed to disclose that letters had arrived at the house even before the sale closed. The lawsuit became public record, and with it, the letters themselves. Suddenly, what had been a private nightmare became a national story. Reporters descended on Boulevard Street. True crime forums lit up with theories. The case that had terrorized one family quietly became a kind of dark folklore, a real house in a real town that seemed to be watched by someone who was never caught. The house itself sat empty for years. The family never moved back in. Eventually, it sold, at a steep loss, to a new owner willing to gamble that whoever the watcher was, they'd lost interest.
In October
To this
1938,
day,
these
no
young
one
men
has
were
ever been
documented.
definitively
They were resting
identified
after
as
a
the
long
author
shift
of
in the coal
letters.
fields. Their
Tips,
faces tell a story of
theories,
labor and
amateur
endurance.
investigations have circulated for over a decade. Podcasts have picked apart every line of every letter. A television adaptation brought the story to a global audience, dramatizing a mystery that, in real life, was never resolved. What makes The Watcher different from most unsolved cases isn't gore or bodies or a single dramatic crime scene. It's the slow, deliberate,
The 1948 excavation report was finally in our hands, but the true location of the treasure remained a mystery.